Lyra had always thought of herself as practical. Life on Zyphera was unpredictable, even for someone like her, who had spent years mastering engineering and diplomacy in the colony. Yet, when she first met Irene, she had no idea just how much her life would change. He was quiet, almost unnervingly calm, and there was a certain stillness to him that made him seem ordinary. In a colony where humans were rare and often underestimated, he blended in effortlessly, unremarkable at first glance. Their marriage had been quiet as well, a small ceremony in a sunlit chamber filled with friends and a few humans who had settled here years before. The alien colonists were polite but distant, and many whispered their doubts about Lyra's choice. Humans were fragile, the aliens said, weak and unfit to survive in the harsh reaches of Zyphera. Lyra ignored the gossip. She had chosen Irene not for appearances or strength, but for the warmth and steadiness he carried with him. At first, life settled into a gentle rhythm. Irene rose early each day, his movements deliberate and careful. He tended the small garden they had cultivated in their home, repairing tools with precision and helping Lyra with the mundane tasks of daily life. He rarely spoke, and when he did, his words were measured, thoughtful, and sometimes surprising in their clarity. There was an air of mystery about him, but Lyra found comfort in it. She liked that he did not demand attention, that he did not seek praise. It was the quiet strength of someone who had endured and learned to survive without fanfare. The colony itself was buzzing with activity, a strange mixture of advanced alien technology and human ingenuity. The aliens had built towers that shimmered with energy, machines that could manipulate the environment with ease, and weapons that were beyond anything humans had ever known. But even in this world of marvels, humans had a place. Their creativity, their adaptability, and their stubborn determination allowed them to survive where many aliens failed. And yet most of the colonists saw humans as delicate curiosities, not equals. Lyra often wondered if Irene shared her concerns about the aliens' underestimation of humans. He never mentioned it directly, but she noticed the way he watched the movements of the colony, the way he noted patterns in the workers' routines, and the subtle ways he improved their lives with small, thoughtful actions. It was as if he saw the world in layers, noticing things others overlooked. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the crystalline spires of Zyphera, Lyra watched Irene from the doorway of their home. He was cleaning a set of tools with meticulous care, moving each piece in a rhythm that seemed almost meditative. The light caught the edge of a small, curved object on his belt, a sword she had never seen him draw. She felt a strange shiver run through her, a mixture of curiosity and unease. She had seen humans wield swords in old stories, but here, in a world of advanced energy weapons and towering machines, it seemed almost archaic. Their quiet life was interrupted by the first signs of trouble. Reports came in from the outskirts of the colony, strange sightings, fleeting glimpses of raiders moving through the rocky terrain. The colony council dismissed them at first, calling the reports exaggerated. The humans whispered their own worries, but no one expected real danger. Lyra, however, felt a tightening in her chest. She looked at Irene, hoping he might share her unease, but he simply nodded and continued his work, calm as always. Days passed, and the sightings became more frequent. A sense of unease spread through the colony. The aliens began fortifying their positions, but their confidence never wavered. They mocked the humans for their caution, calling them weak and fearful. Irene said nothing, but Lyra could see his attention to detail. He studied the raiders' patterns, the timing of their movements, and the ways in which they could exploit the terrain. It was subtle, almost invisible, but she could sense a shift in him, a readiness that had always been dormant. Lyra tried to continue her work, focusing on her engineering projects, repairing communication devices, and improving energy conduits for the colony. She spoke with other humans, trying to understand how they coped with the constant dismissal by the aliens. They were resilient, determined, and clever. They joked quietly about the aliens' arrogance, but there was an edge of tension beneath their humor. Lyra realized that humans had always survived by observing, adapting, and striking when least expected. Irene was simply the embodiment of that principle, though in a form she could not yet fully comprehend. One morning, a warning came from the outer perimeter. Scouts had spotted a group of raiders approaching the colony in larger numbers. The council convened, discussing defensive strategies and deployment of energy shields. Irene stood quietly at the back, his eyes calm, analyzing the maps projected on the wall. Lyra could feel the tension in the room, the rising panic of those who had relied too much on technology and assumed strength. Irene did not panic. He simply studied the projections, tracing paths with his finger, calculating angles and distances with precision. When the meeting ended, Lyra approached him. "Do you think they'll attack?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Irene looked at her, his eyes calm and unwavering. "It is likely," he said softly, "but we are not defenseless." "What do you mean?" The days leading up to the raiders' arrival were tense. Humans and aliens worked side by side, repairing defenses, setting traps, and preparing energy barriers. The aliens still whispered about the humans' weakness, but Lyra noticed the way their eyes occasionally darted toward Irene, as if sensing something they could not define. He moved through the colony with an effortless grace, helping where needed, offering guidance without drawing attention to himself. His quiet presence became a steady anchor for those around him. On the eve of the attack, Lyra could not sleep. She wandered through the corridors of their home, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. She found Irene in the garden, polishing his sword under the pale light of Zyphra's moons. The blade gleamed, simple yet elegant, and she felt an odd sense of awe. "You've always known this would happen," she said softly. Irene did not look up. "I prepared for it, not for myself, but for those who cannot defend themselves. For you." She had married a quiet man, an ordinary man in appearance, but she now realized that he was extraordinary in ways she could not yet understand. The colony had dismissed humans as weak, but Irene's actions, his calm observation, and his readiness hinted at something far greater than mere survival. That night, the first raiders were spotted on the horizon. The colony braced itself, energy barriers humming and weapons charging. Lyra stood beside Irene, her hand brushing against his. He did not speak, but she felt his strength, his determination, and his unwavering focus. It was as if the storm approaching could not shake him, and that steadiness gave her courage. As the raiders drew closer, shadows stretching across the rocky plains, Lyra realized that the quiet human she had married was about to change everything. The colony would soon witness what humans were truly capable of, and Lyra knew that the moment Irene drew his sword, nothing would ever be the same again. In the stillness before the battle, she watched him, a man of few words but of infinite depth, and she understood that survival was only part of what humans could offer. Courage, strategy, and the ability to defy expectations were their greatest weapons, and Irene, quiet and unassuming, carried all of them effortlessly. The first clash was coming, and for the first time, Lyra felt both fear and hope. Fear for what might be lost, hope for what could be gained. Humans had always been underestimated, but now, with Irene at the forefront, the quiet strength of humanity would begin to reveal itself in ways no one could ignore. The morning sun barely touched the crystalline towers of Zyphra when the colony's alarms began to hum. The raiders had come, and there was no longer any time to ignore the threat. Energy barriers shimmered, reflecting the pale light as the colonists scrambled to defensive positions. Lyra stood beside Irene, her heart pounding, trying to steady her breathing. The quiet man she had married had become the calm center of her storm, but even his presence could not erase the tension that gripped the colony. The aliens of Zyphra, towering and imposing, moved quickly, their limbs cutting precise arcs as they activated weapon platforms and shields. Some glanced at the humans with faint disdain, their movements betraying the belief that these fragile creatures could contribute little to the defense. Lyra noticed the whispers, the subtle shaking of heads, the doubt etched on their faces. Yet she also saw something else. Curiosity, a flicker of uncertainty as they glanced toward Irene, who stood silent and still, observing the incoming forces. Lyra's attention followed his gaze. On the horizon, the raiders moved with terrifying coordination. They were not a ragged band of opportunists, but a well-trained squad, armed with weapons that gleamed with alien energy. Their numbers were larger than expected, and the way they spread across the plains suggested intelligence and strategy. The colonists had prepared, but the scale of the threat made Lyra's stomach twist. She knew this would be no ordinary skirmish. Irene, however, remained calm. His eyes scanned the terrain, noting every ridge, every dip in the rocky plains. He moved among the colonists quietly, offering suggestions in low, precise words. His voice was soft, yet it carried authority. He repositioned defensive units, subtly adjusting the angles of the energy shields to cover blind spots. Where other humans might have panicked or faltered, he moved with an almost mechanical efficiency, predicting where the raiders would strike first. Lyra felt a mixture of admiration and unease. She had always known Irene was different, but seeing him in action, Calculating, observing, preparing made her realize just how underestimated humans truly were. The aliens mocked the humans' supposed weakness, but Iren's presence alone unsettled them. There was a quiet confidence in him that spoke of preparation, patience, and experience beyond the obvious. The first wave of raiders reached the outskirts of the colony. Energy barriers flared, and weapons discharged in arcs of light, striking with precision. The aliens fought valiantly, their training and technology keeping the raiders at bay, but it was clear that sheer force alone would not be enough. The humans moved as well, some taking cover, others assisting with repairs or resupplying the alien soldiers. Lyra stayed close to Iren, watching his every movement. Suddenly, a raider broke through one of the side barriers, its weapon firing bursts of blue energy. Iren reacted instantly. He stepped forward, drawing the sword that had remained hidden at his side. The blade caught the sunlight, a simple weapon made extraordinary by the skill of the wielder. With a few precise movements, he deflected the raider's blasts and closed the distance in moments that felt like seconds. Lyra watched in disbelief. The raider was strong and fast, yet Iren moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost impossible. Each strike of his sword was calculated, every motion designed to incapacitate without hesitation. The raider fell back, stunned and unprepared for a human who could fight with such precision. The other aliens turned, their expressions unreadable as they witnessed what humans could truly do. More raiders pressed forward, their formations disciplined and relentless. Iren did not pause. He moved among them, weaving through the attacks with uncanny timing. Each motion was deliberate, every strike calculated to take maximum effect with minimal effort. The humans around him began to gain courage, inspired by what they saw. Where fear had dominated, there was now hope, a realization that even the smallest, quietest human could change the tide of battle. Lyra could feel the change in the colony. The aliens began to notice the humans' resilience, the subtle ways in which they adapted to the threat. Iren's presence inspired coordination and confidence. Energy barriers were reinforced faster, tactical adjustments were made on the fly, and small groups of humans began taking positions that maximized their advantage. It was no longer a simple defense. It was a counterattack, led quietly by the man who had once seemed so ordinary. The raiders were intelligent, but they had underestimated human adaptability. Every time they tried a new tactic, Iren seemed to anticipate it. He guided the humans, whispered instructions to the aliens, and moved with a calm determination that became the heartbeat of the colony's resistance. Lyra followed him, assisting with minor repairs, handing him tools, and occasionally helping coordinate small teams. Even in the chaos, there was order, and much of it came from Iren's quiet authority. Hours passed, and the battle intensified. The raiders pressed harder, their numbers overwhelming at times. Aliens and humans alike began to tire, their movements slower, their energy reserves dwindling. Lyra's arms ached from helping repair shields, and the air was thick with heat and tension. Yet Iren remained unshaken. He moved with steady precision, never showing fatigue, never panicking. Each motion, each decision, seemed to radiate a calm certainty that reassured those around him. At one point, a group of raiders attempted to flank the colony, moving quickly to bypass the main defenses. Lyra noticed them too late to react alone, but Iren was already there. He intercepted them, his sword cutting arcs through the alien formation with a speed that defied expectation. The raiders faltered, their coordinated attack disrupted. In moments they retreated, confused and shaken by the quiet human who had anticipated their every move. Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. She had known humans were clever, adaptable, and brave, but seeing it displayed so vividly in the heat of battle was overwhelming. Iren's quiet nature, once mistaken for weakness, was revealed as a strength unlike any other. He did not need to shout or issue commands. His actions spoke louder than words, inspiring those around him to rise above fear and doubt. By midday, the tide began to turn. The raiders, though still numerous, were confused and hesitant. Iren had disrupted their formations, weakened their morale, and shown that humans could fight with cunning and skill equal to the aliens. Lyra noticed how the aliens began to rely more on human guidance, following Iren's subtle instructions, trusting his judgment in ways they had never done before. Lyra herself felt a transformation within. The quiet, ordinary man she had married was no longer ordinary in any sense. He was a leader, a strategist, and a fighter. She felt pride swelling in her chest, a recognition of the truth that humans were underestimated at their peril. The other humans around her began to act with renewed courage, inspired by Iren's example. They moved with precision, improvised cleverly, and defended the colony with a determination that surprised even themselves. As the battle raged, Iren continued to guide and protect. He moved like water through the chaos, calm, fluid, and unyielding. Raiders fell back in confusion, their confidence shattered. The aliens, once disdainful of human weakness, now looked upon them with a mix of awe and respect. Lyra realized that the quiet human she had married was not just extraordinary in combat. He embodied the resilience, adaptability, and determination that humans had always possessed but were rarely recognized for. By late afternoon, the raiders had begun to retreat. The colony had sustained damage, but the defense was successful. The humans and aliens alike were exhausted, covered in sweat and dust, yet there was a sense of triumph in the air. Lyra looked at Iren, who stood quietly among the others, his sword sheathed once more. He did not boast or seek recognition. He simply observed, calm and composed, as if the battle had been merely a routine day. Lyra approached him, her hands trembling. "Iren, you saved us, all of us," she said softly, struggling to find words. He looked at her, his eyes steady and warm. "We saved each other," he replied simply. "Humans, aliens, together, we adapt, we survive, that is all we have ever done." Humans had always survived because of ingenuity, courage, and determination. They had always been underestimated, and yet in the moments that truly mattered, they rose to the challenge. Iren was the embodiment of that truth, quiet, unassuming, and impossibly strong in ways that could not be measured by technology or numbers alone. The colony began to repair, working together to mend broken shields, rebuild structures, and tend to the injured. The aliens, once dismissive of human capabilities, now consulted with them, taking guidance from the very species they had assumed was weak. Lyra noticed the shift in perception, the quiet recognition that humans could not be ignored, that their resilience and skill could turn the tide in even the most dire situations. As the sun set over the crystalline towers, casting long shadows across the plains of Zyphera, Lyra and Iren stood together, surveying the aftermath. The quiet human she had married had revealed his true strength, and with it, the potential of all humanity. The colony was safe, for now, but more importantly, humans had shown that they were capable of greatness, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra reached for Iren's hand, feeling the warmth and steadiness that had carried her through the day. "I always knew there was more to you," she whispered. Iren's calm gaze met hers. "There is more in all of us," he said softly. "We are stronger than they think, and this is only the beginning." They were a force to be reckoned with, clever, adaptable, and brave. And at the center of it all was the quiet human, whose actions had changed everything and whose presence promised that the future would never underestimate them again. The morning after the raiders' failed attack was quiet, almost eerily so. Zyphera's crystalline towers glimmered under the rising sun, reflecting the calm before what Lyra feared might be an even greater storm. The colony was busy with repairs, humans and aliens working side by side, yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Everyone knew that the raiders would return. They always did, and next time they would come stronger, smarter, and with more firepower. Lyra found herself walking alongside Iren through the central plaza. He moved quietly, his eyes scanning the repaired barricades and the energized shields. There was a calm in him that contrasted sharply with the nervous energy of the colonists around them. She tried to understand him, this quiet human who seemed ordinary in every visible way, yet carried the kind of power that had turned the tide of battle without a single boast. "They will return," she said softly, "sooner than we expect. We adapt." Scouts returned from the outskirts with reports of strange movements in the rocky plains, and the colony council began discussing strategies for the inevitable second attack. Unlike the first, this one would not be a simple raid. The raiders had observed, studied, and were likely planning to exploit any weaknesses they had discovered. The council grew anxious, debating tactics and defensive positioning, but Iren remained silent, listening, observing, and making notes in his own quiet way. By afternoon, Lyra noticed that the humans, who had been shy and cautious before, were beginning to take initiative. Inspired by Iren's performance in the previous attack, they began repairing weapons, reinforcing barriers, and studying the raiders' previous movements. Where fear had dominated, determination now grew. Humans had learned that they could make a difference. Iren, as always, did not seek recognition. He moved among them like a shadow, guiding them without speaking loudly, offering small adjustments and correcting mistakes with a calm hand. He studied the terrain with a careful eye, noting points of advantage, areas that could be trapped, and paths that would give the raiders the most difficulty. It was as if the battlefield itself spoke to him, revealing its secrets to someone who knew how to listen. As the sun dipped low, the horizon changed. Figures appeared on the rocky plains, not in scattered formations, but moving with the precision of a well-trained army. The second wave was coming, larger and more organized than the first. Lyra felt her heart tighten. The humans were ready, the aliens were ready, but this force was terrifying in scale and confidence. The raiders had learned from their mistakes, and it was clear that they believed nothing could stop them. When the attack began, chaos erupted instantly. Explosions of alien energy flared across the plains, shaking the ground and scattering dust and debris. The aliens returned fire, their weapons glowing with power, while the humans coordinated to repair damaged shields and support the front lines. Lyra found herself in the thick of the battle, assisting where she could, but constantly keeping her eyes on Eren. He moved like a phantom through the fighting. Where humans and aliens struggled, he appeared, swift and precise, deflecting attacks, neutralizing raiders and guiding others to safety. He never shouted, never demanded attention. Yet the moment he drew his sword, the battlefield seemed to bend around him. Movement slowed for those watching. For those attacking, every strike of his blade was unexpected, unstoppable, and terrifying. The raiders, who had expected humans to be weak and predictable, faltered almost immediately. Their coordinated attacks broke apart when Eren intercepted key units, moving with speed and skill that no technology could match. He was not just strong, he was intelligent, adaptive, and aware of every movement around him. Each motion was deliberate, each strike exact. Humans and aliens alike followed his lead, gaining confidence from his quiet authority. Lyra saw him save dozens of colonists in a matter of moments, moving between threats with an almost supernatural awareness. And yet, despite the chaos, he never seemed rushed, never showed fatigue. It was as if he were a force of nature, calm, unstoppable, and impossible to predict. She realized then that humans had always possessed this potential, but the aliens had never truly understood it. Eren's quiet strength was only a glimpse of what humanity could achieve when underestimated. The raiders tried to regroup, attempting flanking maneuvers and new strategies. They pressed forward with ferocity, but Eren had already anticipated their moves. He directed the humans to cover weak points, instructed the aliens to adjust their formations, and intercepted raiders with surgical precision. Every attack they launched was met with resistance, every plan they executed was countered before it could succeed. The battlefield became a dance of skill, strategy, and quick thinking, and humans, once dismissed as weak, became the key to survival. At one point, Lyra watched as a group of raiders tried to disable the colony's energy supply. They moved swiftly, believing that the humans and aliens would be caught off guard. Eren appeared in a blur, intercepting them before they could even reach their target. His sword moved with unerring accuracy, blocking, striking, and disarming in a fluid motion that seemed impossible. The raiders fell back in confusion, shocked by the humans' speed and precision. It was more than just combat skill. Eren's mind worked differently, calculating angles, predicting movements, and exploiting weaknesses with a clarity that astounded everyone. Humans, Lyra realized, were capable of this by nature: adaptability, observation, creativity, and courage. Eren was the living proof that the quiet, underestimated human could be more dangerous than any alien weapon. The battle raged for hours and fatigue began to show. Aliens slowed, their weapons overheating, and even the humans struggled to maintain focus. Yet Eren remained unwavering. His calm presence inspired those around him. Small squads followed his direction, reinforcing barriers, defending strategic points, and even taking offensive actions where appropriate. The raiders' confidence wavered as their formations collapsed under the unexpected human-led defense. Lyra noticed the change in perception among the alien colonists. They had mocked humans as weak, fragile, and incapable of combat. But now, under Eren's guidance, humans were leading the defense, directing energy shields, organizing counterattacks, and performing with skill and courage that rivaled even the aliens. For the first time, the aliens saw humans as equals, capable of strategy, bravery, and ingenuity. By evening, the second wave was faltering. The raiders were disoriented, their numbers thinning, their attacks becoming desperate. Eren moved through the chaos with measured steps, intercepting critical threats and ensuring that the humans and aliens were coordinated. He never shouted or demanded attention, yet the battlefield responded to his presence as if it were an extension of his will. Lyra felt a mix of awe and fear. This quiet human, whom she had married and thought she understood, was capable of extraordinary power. And it was not the kind of power that came from strength alone. It was the combination of intelligence, observation, courage, and the human ability to adapt that made him unstoppable. The raiders were strong and numerous, but they had underestimated humans in every possible way. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the remaining raiders began to retreat. Their forces were fractured, their confidence shattered, and their fear of humans unmistakable. Iren sheathed his sword, moving quietly among the exhausted colonists, checking that everyone was safe. He did not celebrate or boast. He simply ensured the living were accounted for and the injured attended to, as if the battle had been just another day. Lyra approached him, exhausted, her hands trembling. You did it again. They never expected this. This is who we are. The night settled over Zyphera, but the energy in the colony was electric. Humans and aliens alike were exhausted, but there was a renewed sense of purpose and respect. Humans had shown their worth not just in survival, but in leadership, strategy, and courage. Lyra realized that the quiet human she had married was more than just a protector. He was a symbol of humanity's potential, a living example of what humans could achieve when underestimated and pushed to their limits. As Lyra and Iren stood together, watching the stars emerge above Zyphera, she understood that this was only the beginning. The raiders had been repelled, but the galaxy was vast, and challenges would continue to arise. Yet with humans like Iren, quiet, intelligent, adaptable, and brave, she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Humans had begun to reveal their true potential, and Iren was the spark that would ignite recognition, respect, and perhaps fear in the hearts of all who underestimated them. Lyra squeezed his hand, feeling the steady strength that had carried them through the day. "They'll come back," she whispered. Iren nodded. "And we will be ready, humans always are." The raiders would remember today, and the colony would never forget it. Humanity had begun to shine on Zyphera, and it was only the beginning of what they could achieve. The morning sun rose over Zyphera, painting the crystalline towers in shades of gold and pink. After 2 waves of raider attacks, the colony was battered but alive. Humans and aliens moved through the streets together, repairing damage, restoring energy shields, and comforting the weary. For most, there was relief that the immediate threat had been repelled. For Lyra, the relief was mixed with anticipation. She knew the raiders would return, stronger and more cunning than before. And she knew Iren, her quiet husband, would be ready. Iren walked alongside her, silent as always, yet his calmness carried a power that seemed to steady everyone around him. Lyra noticed how the aliens watched him as he moved through the colony, their expressions shifting from doubt to respect. They had seen humans act during the attacks, but they had never seen anyone like Iren. He did not command loudly or boast. Instead, he acted, and others followed instinctively, inspired by his skill and confidence. As the day progressed, scouts returned with troubling news. The raiders were regrouping, larger in number than before, and they had brought new weapons, energy disruptors capable of bypassing the colony's shields. The council convened, and panic crept into the room. The aliens argued over strategy, debating the best way to counter these new threats, but none had the insight that Iren did. He remained quiet, observing, analyzing. His eyes moved over the maps projected in the council chamber, tracing paths the raiders were likely to take. He spoke only when necessary, offering concise suggestions that cut through the confusion. "Divide their attention," he said calmly. "Draw them into terrain they cannot use obstacles to slow them, protect the key points first. They will not anticipate traps or tactics based on observation and timing. Humans know how to adapt. That is our advantage." By mid-afternoon, the raiders began their 3rd wave. Unlike the previous attacks, they advanced methodically, testing defenses and probing for weaknesses. Energy shields flared, weapons discharged, and the colony's defenses strained under the pressure. Humans and aliens moved in tandem, following Iren's subtle guidance. He moved among them, pointing, adjusting, and intercepting threats with incredible precision. The raiders attempted to flank the colony from multiple directions simultaneously, a tactic designed to overwhelm the defenders. Lyra watched from a vantage point as Iren anticipated their moves before they even reached the colony's outer walls. He positioned humans to intercept, directed aliens to hold key choke points, and prepared energy barriers at angles that forced the raiders into disadvantageous positions. Then the real test began. A squad of elite raiders, faster and more heavily armed than any before, charged toward the central plaza. Their weapons emitted pulses that could cut through shields, and their armor deflected most attacks. The colony's defenses trembled under the assault. Lyra's heart raced as she prepared to assist in any way she could. Irene stepped forward, drawing his sword once more. Its blade caught the sunlight, reflecting the brilliance of his calm determination. Where humans and aliens had relied on technology, Irene relied on skill, intuition, and strategy. The raiders hesitated for a fraction of a second, an instant that became their undoing. With precise, fluid movements, he intercepted their attack, disarming one raider, blocking another's strike, and moving with a speed that seemed impossible. Lyra could hardly keep her eyes on him. Each motion was measured, efficient, and devastating. Irene's presence alone disrupted the raiders' formations. Humans and aliens gained confidence, inspired by the silent authority of the man in their midst. Even the aliens, trained and powerful, followed his lead instinctively, adapting to the battle in ways they had never considered before. The elite raiders tried to regroup, using coordinated maneuvers to break through Irene's defenses. But he was always one step ahead. He anticipated their attacks, countered their strategies, and used their own strength against them. Each move was calculated, each strike precise. Where others would have panicked, Irene remained calm, his quiet determination radiating outward, giving hope and direction to everyone around him. Lyra joined a group of humans to reinforce the damaged shields at the colony's perimeter. As they worked, she watched Irene move through the battlefield like a force of nature. He did not hesitate, did not tire, and never faltered. His sword became an extension of his mind, a tool to enforce strategy, protect the innocent, and exploit the weaknesses of the enemy. The raiders had underestimated him, and that mistake would cost them everything. Hours passed, and the battle reached its peak. Explosions rocked the colony, sending shards of crystal and dust into the air. The raiders, though numerous and skilled, began to falter. Their formations broke apart under the relentless, adaptive tactics of humans guided by Irene. The aliens, once dismissive of human capabilities, now relied on them for strategy and coordination. The quiet human they had ignored was leading the defense, and the impact was undeniable. At a critical moment, a group of raiders attempted to breach the energy core, aiming to disable the colony's shields entirely. Lyra felt a surge of fear. If they succeeded, the entire colony would be vulnerable. But before she could react, Irene was there. He intercepted the raiders with flawless precision, his sword striking down obstacles in moments. The raiders hesitated, then retreated, unable to anticipate his speed and skill. Lyra watched, her breath caught in her throat. Irene moved like water, fluid and unstoppable, yet calm and deliberate. Each human around him acted with renewed courage, following his guidance, improvising, and using their wits to protect the colony. The battle was no longer just about strength or numbers. It was about intelligence, adaptability, and the courage to act. Humans, underestimated for so long, were showing their true potential. As the sun began to set, the raiders' remaining forces faltered. Exhaustion, confusion, and fear spread through their ranks. They had expected humans to be weak, predictable, and fragile. They had been wrong. Every raid, every movement, every strike revealed a level of skill, strategy, and courage they had not anticipated. Irene, the quiet human, had become the embodiment of humanity's underestimated power. Finally, the last of the raiders retreated. Zyphera's towers glimmered under the evening light, damaged but standing. Humans and aliens alike breathed heavily, their bodies tired but spirits lifted. The battle had been won, not through overwhelming force, but through intelligence, adaptability, and the quiet determination of one human who had refused to be underestimated. Lyra approached Irene, who stood quietly among the defenders. His sword was sheathed, and he moved with calm authority even as the last remnants of the raiders fled. "You've done it again," she said, her voice trembling. They never expected this." Irene had revealed something greater than skill with a sword or courage in battle. He had revealed the truth about humanity, underestimated, overlooked, but capable of extraordinary feats when pushed to the edge. The aliens had begun to see it, and the humans themselves were discovering a new confidence within. The night settled over Zyphera, quiet and calm after the storm. The colony worked through repairs, tended to the injured, and reinforced defenses, but a new understanding had taken root. Humans were no longer seen as weak. They were clever, adaptable, and capable of brilliance under pressure. Irene, quiet and unassuming, had shown them all the way. Lyra squeezed his hand as they walked through the plaza, her eyes filled with admiration. "They'll come again," she whispered. Irene nodded. "And we will be ready, humans always are." The quiet human had become a leader, a force, and a promise that the galaxy would never ignore humanity again. And as they looked out over the colony, the stars shining above Zyphera, Lyra realized that the true battle was not just against raiders. It was against the underestimation of humans. Irene had begun to change that perception, and with each step, each calculated move, he was proving that humans, even quiet ones, could achieve greatness that no one had expected. The night was silent, but the quiet human's presence spoke volumes. The colony had survived, humanity had proven itself, and the stage was set for what would come next. The raiders might return, stronger and more numerous, but humans had learned a truth that no enemy could ignore. Underestimated humans were the most dangerous force of all. Lyra felt a surge of hope. With Irene by her side, the colony would not only survive, they would thrive. Humanity's quiet strength had begun to shine on Zyphera, and nothing would ever be the same. The dawn over Zyphera was sharper than usual, the sunlight glinting off the crystalline towers like blades. The previous battles had left their mark, scorched earth, shattered walls, and the weary faces of humans and aliens alike. The colony had survived, but they knew the final confrontation was coming. The raiders would not stop until they were utterly defeated or the colony fell. The tension in the air was thick, yet amid it all, there was a sense of determination, almost electricity, sparked by one quiet human. Irene moved through the colony with calm precision, inspecting defensive positions, recalculating tactics, and quietly giving guidance to the humans and aliens around him. Lyra walked beside him, observing how he commanded respect without words. The aliens, once dismissive, now looked to him for strategy, their eyes reflecting a mixture of awe and trust. Humans, inspired by his previous actions, worked with confidence, knowing they had a leader who understood not just combat but the essence of adaptation and survival. Reports came in from the scouts. The raiders had assembled an army larger than any seen before. Entire units had been reinforced, new leaders brought in, and devastating weapons deployed. But Irene did not flinch. He studied the incoming forces, noting patterns, strengths, weaknesses, and possible points of advantage. His mind worked like a finely tuned machine, calculating, predicting, and preparing. Lyra felt a mixture of fear and admiration. She had always known Irene was exceptional, but now, seeing the scale of the impending attack, she realized just how vital his calm intelligence and human adaptability were. The aliens might have advanced technology and brute strength, but humans had ingenuity, courage, and the ability to think in ways that machines could not anticipate. Irene embodied all of it. As the raider forces approached, the colony moved into final positions. Humans and aliens worked together seamlessly, following the strategies Irene had subtly designed. Barricades were reinforced, energy shields angled to maximize coverage, and key positions were staffed with the most skilled defenders. It was not a show of brute force, but of coordination, adaptability, and confidence. When the raiders finally struck, the battle erupted in a roar of energy and chaos. Explosions lit the horizon, shaking the ground beneath the colony. Raiders charged from multiple directions, attempting to overwhelm defenses with speed and firepower. The aliens responded with powerful weapons, humans repaired critical systems and guided energy shields, and Irene moved quietly among them, a calm and deadly force. The first wave of raiders that breached the perimeter were met by Irene himself. His sword gleamed as he intercepted the attackers with precision unmatched by any alien warrior. He struck with purpose, each movement calculated, each parry and counterattack turning the raiders' own strength against them. It was as if he anticipated every move before it happened, reading not just their bodies but their intentions. Lyra followed the human squads, coordinating repairs and directing supplies. She could see the difference Irene made. His quiet authority inspired courage and ingenuity. Humans who had once doubted themselves now acted decisively, improvising traps, reinforcing weak points, and adapting their tactics on the fly. Aliens began following human guidance, adjusting formations and shields according to Irene's subtle instructions. The raiders brought in their elite units, creatures armed with devastating weapons and armor that had repelled all before them. They charged at the heart of the colony, confident that their superior technology would guarantee victory. But Eren moved to intercept, his sword flashing with skill, speed, and precision. Every strike he made was perfect, each motion calculated to disable, not destroy, to exploit weaknesses in a way that only a human mind could achieve. Lyra watched in awe as he dismantled their formations. The elite raiders faltered, their attacks disrupted by a single quiet human who moved with unwavering focus. Humans and aliens rallied behind him, gaining courage and confidence with each success. The battlefield had shifted. What had once seemed like a hopeless fight had become a display of strategy, adaptation, and the underestimated power of humans. Eren's calm extended beyond his combat skill. He guided humans and aliens to hold critical choke points, trap incoming reinforcements, and protect vulnerable areas of the colony. Every movement was deliberate, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize unnecessary risk. The raiders, who had relied on intimidation and numbers, now faced a coordinated, intelligent, and adaptable defense that seemed to anticipate every move. As the battle raged, Lyra realized something profound. Humans were not the weakest link in this galaxy. They were clever, resourceful, and courageous, capable of turning the tide with intelligence and teamwork. Eren, in his quiet way, had revealed that potential. He was no longer just a husband or a human. He was a symbol, proof that underestimated beings could achieve greatness when pushed to the edge. Hours passed. The raiders, exhausted and disoriented, began to falter. Their formations broke apart under the combined pressure of humans and aliens acting as one, guided by Eren's steady presence. Lyra moved through the battlefield, helping where she could, but constantly aware of the quiet human whose actions inspired so much courage and strategy. Then came the final assault. The raider commander himself, a towering figure wielding a weapon of terrifying power, surged toward the colony's center. His arrival sent waves of panic through the remaining forces, but Eren did not hesitate. He drew his sword, calm and unflinching, and moved to meet the commander head-on. The two clashed, metal striking metal, energy surging from the raider's weapon while Eren's sword countered with unmatched precision. The battlefield seemed to freeze around them, the focus narrowing to the quiet human and the raider commander. Every strike was calculated, every movement deliberate. The commander, confident and cruel, had underestimated Eren. The human's skill was not just in strength, but in observation, anticipation, and adaptation. Eren moved with a grace that was almost unnatural, reading the commander's attacks before they were fully executed. He countered each strike, exploiting openings and pushing the raider back with a combination of precision, intelligence, and relentless focus. The humans and aliens watched, holding their breath, as the quiet man they had come to trust faced what seemed like an unbeatable foe and began to win. Finally, with a calculated move, Eren disarmed the raider commander, forcing him to yield. The remaining raiders, seeing their leader defeated, faltered and fled. The colony's defenders cheered, though their voices were hoarse and bodies exhausted. Victory had been achieved, not through superior technology or brute force alone, but through intelligence, adaptability, and the quiet determination of one human. Lyra rushed to Eren, her heart pounding with relief and admiration. You've done it," she said, almost in disbelief. "They're gone." Humans and aliens alike shared stories of the battle, all centered on the quiet human whose actions had inspired courage, strategy, and hope. Eren did not seek recognition, but it was given freely. He had changed the perception of humans in Zyphra forever. Lyra stood beside him, watching as humans and aliens worked together with renewed respect and understanding. She realized that Eren's quiet strength was more than skill with a sword. It was his mind, his insight, his patience, and his courage that had won the day. Humans, long underestimated, had proven themselves as adaptable, intelligent, and capable of extraordinary feats. As night fell over Zyphra, Lyra and Eren stood on a high balcony looking over the city. The stars above shimmered, reflecting in the towers below. "They'll come again," Lyra said softly, thinking of the galaxy beyond. Eren's gaze remained steady. "And we will be ready. Humans always are." A quiet human had faced impossible odds and had proven that courage, intelligence, and adaptability were stronger than brute force. The colony, and perhaps the galaxy, had learned to respect humanity in a way they never had before. She squeezed his hand, feeling the calm and strength that had guided them through every battle. "I always knew there was more to you," she whispered. Eren smiled faintly, calm and unshaken. "There is more in all of us," he said. Humans have always survived against odds that seemed impossible. We learn, adapt, and act when it matters. That is who we are. The quiet human who had drawn his sword with calm precision had changed the course of events and inspired a new era of respect, courage, and hope. As Lyra watched Irene, standing tall and silent beneath the night sky, she realized that the quiet human she had married was extraordinary not just in skill, but in heart, mind, and spirit. He had shown what humans were truly capable of, and the galaxy would never forget the day a quiet human drew his sword, and everything changed. The colony rested, but humanity's story on Zyphera had only just begun. The quiet strength of one human had revealed the potential of all, and with courage, intelligence, and unity, the future would never underestimate them again.